John Hook's Newsmaker Saturday starts now.
Thanks for joining us on Newsmaker Saturday. In Arizona, there is probably no issue that is more important, paramount to our future than water. And obviously, with a finite resource, how do we manage it? How do we deal with it? Especially in a climate that is getting drier right now. We're at least in the midst of maybe a 30-year drought, which is not unusual, by the way. Arizona goes through these quite a bit historically. We're going to talk about our water situation, top to bottom, with one of the foremost experts in Arizona and maybe in the country on water management, Grady Gammage. It's great to see you. Thank you for being with us.
Good to be here, John. Thank you.
Yeah, just to clear it up, people know the name because of the auditorium. That is named after your father.
Yeah, that's right. People ask me, were you named after the building? No, it's named after my father. I'm Grady Gammage Jr.
Okay, Grady, you've been immersed in this. You spent, I think, 12 years on the CAP executive board. You are steeped in water policy. Let's just take a macro view for a minute. Does Arizona have enough water to maintain its current lifestyle, quote unquote?
So that's exactly the question that I tried to ask in a report I did for the Kyle Center for Water Policy, which is part of the Morrison Institute at ASU, which is available if people want to read it. And what I did was I wrote a report in 2011 saying, how many people can we support with our current water supply? And then I looked at it again this last year. And the number's gone down. There's no question but that our ramp toward future growth based on current water supplies, and this is for the Sun Corridor, not for all of Arizona. All of Arizona is actually a little bit more negative in terms of water supply. The number's gone down. But having said that, the dilemma of talking about water is the time frames that you have to deal with. So while the growth future is more constrained by water than it was, instead of talking about 50 years, we're talking maybe about 25 to 30 years. That's within the time frame that we need to start making changes in the way we manage water.
You're talking about 25 to 30 years of water certainty given our situation right now.
Yes, but let me explain one thing for sure. That's based on all of the farming that takes place in Maricopa, Pinal, and Pima going away in order to shift that water to urban populations in those counties.
Yes. And people are going to be shocked to learn that agriculture uses 70% of the water in the state. And as we shift from agriculture to urban, a lot of people wouldn't think this. You're thinking, well, they're filling up swimming pools, they're watering their lawn. You actually save water dramatically by shifting from agriculture to urban, right?
Yeah, I represented a client doing a big zoning case several years ago on property that is currently entirely in a tree crop agriculture, a nut crop. And we entitled it for about 20,000 houses. The water use will go down by 60%.
It's incredible.
Between the trees and yes.
Nobody would
so
think
it
that.
Is dramatic. But let me tell you something to think about here, John. We have been fortunate in Arizona that we've tended to grow crops and then grow people in the same place. So we convert land from agriculture to subdivisions, and water use goes down. In that, we are different than, for example, California or Colorado, which tend to have an agricultural growing area and a population base. California, it's the coast versus the valleys. And Colorado, it's one side of the Rockies versus the other. So they've had much more tension between farming and urban use than we have. Arizona's been fortunate in that regard.
Okay, since about 2000, the Colorado River Basin has been under extreme stress. Maybe no better illustration of that than the bathtub ring at Lake Mead, which has dropped about 130 feet since the beginning of 2000. That's a pretty stark visualization when you see that bathtub ring and you see what's happening. Can you put that in perspective in terms of our allocation of Colorado River water, which is also our lifeblood here in Arizona? It's not our only source, but it's a big piece. How are we doing on that?
The bathtub ring at Lake Powell is very dramatic, and I worry that The press overhypes that and over panics people.
Oh, we
with
would
this
never do
sense,
that, Grady.
Yeah, really. Yeah, the press there. That people get this sense that as it goes down, we're not going to have water suddenly.
Right.
And it is dramatic. What's going to happen probably this year is we're going to get the first shortage declaration on the river that will impact on how much water Arizona gets. And the cut will be significant in the 300,000, 200,000 to 300,000 acre foot range. All of that cut comes from deliveries for agriculture. None of it comes from cities. So for the foreseeable future, even a continued shortfall on the river is not going to impact municipal supplies. Here's a dilemma of that, though. As we cut agricultural supplies, farmers can go back on groundwater pumping.
Yeah.
Legally, they can do that. And that's a parallel problem. Groundwater is being depleted faster than it should be, and the Groundwater Management Act has some holes in it.
Let's talk about that for a minute. Let's just go over the whole array. We get our water in Arizona from snowpack, rainfall, the CAP, and groundwater. Is that pretty much it?
Yeah. When you said snowpack and rainfall, that basically means Salt River Project for the Sun Corridor area, for Phoenix, for Metro Phoenix is where the Salt River Project delivers. So yes, as a statewide, those are basically the sources.
And
There's a real
go ahead.
There's a desire to think of effluent as a new water source. I think that's the wrong way to think about it. Effluent is taking the water you already have and using it more efficiently by recycling it more times.
Right.
It's not a new water source.
Okay, let's talk about Salt River for a minute. The Salt River Project, which is a brilliant series of stair-step dams that, thank God, our political leadership, and this is the one thing, Arizona, we may have political disagreements, but on water, we seem to have realized that we better find consensus because it's so vitally important. The point is, Salt River Project, that whole system is absolutely brilliant. And thank God we've got it, because we're in much better shape than a lot of states that have more water supply.
We are. And that's a result of both SRP and CAP. SRP is the older system. And one of the really good things is SRP, which delivers water from the mountains of central Arizona, probably has a somewhat different profile in terms of the impact of climate change than CAP, which delivers Colorado River water, which is snowfall in the Rockies. There's some evidence, not sure how solid this is yet, but some evidence that the SRP hydrological system will be less impacted by some aspects of climate change. And SRP is also kind of at the cutting edge of figuring out how to better manage their dams. It may involve some pretty dramatic stuff, like not using a horseshoe dam anymore and rebuilding more than flat dam, because you can better manage the water supply if you do that.
Okay, and people will be shocked. You've got a graph that shows our water usage in Arizona despite explosive growth, and we're projected, I think we're talking about 9 million people by 2050, that our water usage in Arizona has stayed relatively flat.
Yeah, I don't have the share screen function to show you this graph, but if people go to the Morrison report, you can pull it up pretty quickly. And it's the graph that everyone in the Arizona water buffalo community, that we call them, loves to show. And it shows water use going up steadily in the 1950s, and then beginning to decline. We use about the same amount of water today as a state we used in 1957.
It's incredible.
Because what's happened is agricultural use has declined. It's been replaced with urban use. And as the water use has stayed relatively flat and even declining, the population and the gross state product have skyrocketed.
Okay, and the discussion has been about sustainability for people moving here. Can we handle all this? The New York Times in 2010 wrote, Arizona is in dire straits. Calculations based on Arizona's own water accounting suggest that the demand could outpace its existing water supply in less than a decade. The Guardian in 2018 asked, Plight of Phoenix. How long can the world's least sustainable city survive? This was dire stuff, and I don't think they visited here, and they don't understand what we've got going. We're in much better shape.
Right behind me, John, is a book I wrote, which I'll plug for a second, that answers those exact claims. The first one, the New York Times one, so this is my second bashing of the press to some degree today.
Go ahead.
The East Coast press loves to report on Arizona as a giant demographic mistake, that people should never have lived there in the first place. And they are relentless about this. The first one you cite that says we'll run out of water based on current use within a decade makes the assumption that agricultural use does not decline. Right. That agricultural use stays the way it is as we grow more people. That is absolutely contrary to the way Arizona's grown since statehood. For 100 years. That isn't the way it's worked here.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time the press got it wrong.
No, it wouldn't. Yeah, there's a lot of misunderstanding of the nature of Arizona.
All right, I had Stephen Koonin on, noted physicist. He's an expert on climate change. He was in the Obama administration. He basically said, in terms of climate change, he said basically we've warmed up 1 degree in 100 years. He said, but the Southwest has been in a prolonged drought for about, he said, it's going on 20, 30 years. He said, but that is not unusual, that over 20,000 years, we have gone through these cycles many, many, many times. His point being, we know this, you know this, and we've planned for this, right?
Yeah, I am not an expert on climate change, I will tell you. I have, in my new report, I've made a more significant reduction in my assessment of Arizona, of the Sun Corridor's water supply, than I did in 2011, a more significant reduction for climate change. I had previously used about a 15% number. I'm thinking 25% is more in line with probabilities now. But to your point that we have planned, and we're the only state that can say anything like this. Over the last about 15 years, we have put more than 10 years worth of water supply for the Sun Corridor, for urban Arizona, underground. We've banked it.
Recharge.
So it's a savings account we have. If you cut off all water inputs, we got about 10 years worth of water in the bank, as it were, to use. And that's without dipping into prehistoric groundwater, which we're using too much of. But that's like our inheritance. I tell people all the time, think about this the way you think about money. You have cash flow. That's what comes in every year in the rivers and the canals. You have savings accounts in the lakes and the reservoirs. You have kind of a certificate of deposit in the underground groundwater storage, and then you have an inheritance that's the prehistoric groundwater that we're using too much of. And Grady, you got to decide how you want to jiggle those and use them, and how much risk do you want to take, and how much do you want to leave for future generations.
Now, I've always thought that if people really adhere to this idea that the ocean is rising, which it is, and it has been for millions of years, by the way, it's gone up 8 inches in the last, I think in the last 100 years. Oceans have risen, okay? That's not a big number, and it waxes and wanes as well. But the point being, if we believe this, I would think that taking salt out of the Pacific Ocean and pulling water out of the ocean would be kind of the final solution if we needed it. It's wickedly expensive, but I suspect if we really needed it, we could do it, right?
And the price is coming down all the time. It is still not economical for most use in Arizona, but there are more desalinization plants being built in California. And the probable way we'll do this in Arizona is by cutting a deal with California for them to desalt ocean water and give us more of their Colorado River water, which they have more than we have rights to.
Do we have the political hammer to do that? I mean, California outnumbers us in Congress by, an enormous margin, like 5 to 1. Would we be able to do something like that?
Yeah, I think there will come a day when it becomes more economical and that we'll be able to do a deal like that with California. That the Western states, it's kind of like a game of diplomacy, where the Western states are a little bit like sovereign countries with regard to negotiating water treaties with one another, with the Bureau of Reclamation, the Department of the Interior sort of overseeing all of that. And we've had a fair amount of success, particularly with Nevada, which didn't get the right to very much Colorado River water. So we banked some water on Nevada's behalf that's in Arizona for them to use in the future. And we have a long history of being able to negotiate with the other basin states.
Okay, final, just bottom line it for us. If you were to give Arizona a grade right now on its water management, what would you say?
So we're the best at this. Arizona it has a really rich history. This is the thing Arizona does best. We get, I think, historically a solid A on water management. But we are in the process of taking the toughest exam we've ever had to take. So I'm not going to predict our grade on that. Based on past performance, we'll be fine.
Yeah, well, we've had some smart people, fortunately. We've been blessed with that. Great to see you, Grady Gammage. We appreciate your expertise and your time on Newsmaker Saturday. We're back in a minute on Newsmaker Saturday. Back on Newsmaker Saturday, we've got about, rough count, 15 fires burning across the state. These are kind of major fires that are burning across Arizona. We wanted to talk about where we stand on forest management, fire management right now, and we're going to check in with John Truett. He is the State Fire Management Officer for Arizona. John, thank you for being with us.
Good to be here.
John, just give me kind of a overview. Is this a rough year for Arizona, or have we kind of dodged it so far?
Well, we were dodging it early. Right now, we're in it. We're tapped out on resources. So we've got at least 8 major fires going, and with the weather that we have and the lightning that we're currently going through, we're at our peak, and it's going to get even more busy here in the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, we get the monsoon moving in, and it's a double-edged sword. You get the moisture, which is great. You get the overnight humidity, which gives you guys time to make some progress. But the problem is you get lightning before all that, and that can be a problem, right?
Yeah, it's becoming a problem right now. We're getting dry lightning across the rim country, spilling down into the southeast. And yeah, you're correct with that little bit of a moisture flow. We get humidities are improving, but yeah, we get the convection with that, and we get the dry lightning, and no real measurable precipitation to help out the fuels directly and put the fires out.
John, in terms of forest health right now, if we're looking, we've got a lot of fires. I'm thinking about the Telegraph fire. That was burning, continues to burn in a lot of low-lying grass and shrubs, and that's different than a big forest fire, obviously. But in terms of forest health right now, are we still battling bark beetle, or is that in the past?
No, bark beetle is ongoing, and even when we got the drought going on now, the conifers, they cannot produce enough sap to keep the bugs out, and it's just going to get worse before it gets better with the ongoing drought.
Is there a change in strategy? I watched the DC-10 roll in. That is a huge asset to have. Are we trying now to get on these fires more quickly and knock them down? Instead of using the tankers to build fire line, it seems that we're going in and attacking early on some of these.
Yeah, that's correct. We're trying to keep them small, and our strategy is use our fixed wing as they come available, but we only have so many of them. And then once we get multiple starts across the state, we have to start prioritizing where we're going to use those aircraft based on values at risk, threats of community, infrastructure, things like that. And right now, if we have the air tankers assigned to large fires and we get an initial attack start, we divert those aircraft to keep those smaller fires down over to the initial attacks.
And as time goes on, then you're battling resources from other states that want those aerial assets, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And we were just speaking today with our Western fire managers, and Idaho, Montana, North Dakota, the South Dakota, they're all experiencing very early fire seasons and large fire growth already. So usually this time of year, we're not in too much competition with the Western resources, but this year we are with the early onset of fire season for some of the Western states.
I'm not sure if anybody's talked about this, John, but I'm curious, every industry and every business is struggling to find workers because of COVID and the hangover of that. Is this true in the wildland firefighting arena as well? Has it been more difficult to get human resources?
Yeah, it's been a challenge recruiting this year. Not at the state level, but the federal level. Everybody is struggling to maintain their crews, and we also have areas where we had to shut down just the unavailability of trained firefighters.
What is the thing you need most now, John?
Yeah, it's kind of obvious. I'm breaking the weather.
Yeah.
But we just need to keep everybody safe. Right now, it's going to be an ongoing, long-term duration firefight on our hands, and we just need to stay patient. What we really need is help from the public. We need to help. We have fire restrictions on. We need the public to adhere to those fire restrictions. They're here for a reason. Our closures are there for a reason. It's just so dry out into the forest that any little thing is creating an ignition source and is taking off. Things like chains, making sure your loads are secure. We just need to have the public be very vigilant on what we have going on, and be very careful with those accidental ignitions.
How many years have you been at this, John?
41 years.
Okay, in Arizona.
5 years in Arizona. But I've been fighting fire all across the West my whole entire career.
Can we talk for a minute about urban interface? We've got people moving into the forest, and this complicates matters because as people move into these areas, they're putting they're obviously at risk. People love to live there, but in the past, fires could burn and they wouldn't touch civilization in a lot of spots, but now they do. This is complicated stuff, and you need that defensible space, right? It's so important.
Yes, defensible space is the only way that you can we can get in there and defend those structures. We have Firewise programs out for the communities, educating them on vegetation reduction. We also have a new initiative, a Healthy Forest Initiative, where they're going to try to increase acres that we treat to try to get the ecosystem back in balance, which we won't do in our generation, but we're going to try our best working with our federal partners and start reducing some of this fuel loading that's been created over the decades. Yeah,
there's no doubt. When you see a forest that's treated, the fire hits it and it just lies down. It's amazing to watch, and it is so effective. And there's a recognition, I think, even from environmentalists, this is very healthy.
Yeah, the state we live in, a lot of it, other than the Sonoran Desert, most of our vegetation and our ecosystems are fire dependent. They need fire to regenerate. And, unfortunately, in the wildland community, we've been very, very successful at putting fires out, and it's led to, over the last 100 years, of an unnatural buildup of vegetation, where some of those stands like chaparral, understory ponderosa, those need to burn on a regular basis.
Yep. Well, we have learned a lot. We have learned a lot. John Truett, State Fire Management Officer for Arizona. John, I'll let you get back to work. I know you're busy, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Great to see you. We're back in a moment on Newsmaker Saturday. Well, we always learn something here, and that's the fun of it. John Hook, Fox 10 for Facebook and Twitter, social media. We will see you next week on Newsmaker Saturday.